Um, okay, so choosing your safety, dream, and target schools. So, what does that even mean? So just some definitions. So there's no specific, cutoffs for safety school, target schools, or dream schools. So these are all relative to your academic credentials. So a safety school might be a target school for someone else, and a dream school might be a target school for someone else, just depending on your academic credentials. When I mean by academic credentials, I'm focusing primarily on your test scores and your grade, so your GPA and your test scores. So those are primarily how you choose, what a safety, target, or dream school is. So some of the general guidelines is a safety school is any school where your credentials are far above or pretty much above average for incoming freshmen. So you could estimate it. So if you feel as if you have a more than 80% chance for acceptance, that's probably on like on the end of safety school. Target school is when your academic credentials are in the range of average. So let's say a school says, for ACT scores, a school says, average score is 27 to a 30. So if you get 28, 29, 27, or 30, you're in that range. That kind of becomes like a target for you. So if you're in the average range, that's a target school definition. And dream school is anywhere where you're below average. So if a school has, let's say a 35 average ACT, and you have a 30 or 32 or something like that, then that becomes kind of a reach for you. You're slightly below average for academic credentials, and you want to reach to get to that school. In addition to that, any school that has less than a 30% acceptance rate, so any selective university, becomes a reach or dream school. So even if you have perfect scores, test scores, and perfect GPA, some of these universities are incredibly selective to get into. So Harvard has a 5% acceptance rate. So getting into Harvard, no matter who you are or how perfect your scores are, it's incredibly hard. So reach schools are reach schools for everyone, regardless of academic credentials. Okay, so we kind of just as like as an exercise. If you guys want to follow along with this at home, first thing to start off with is target school. So we're gonna start in the middle. So first thing you want to do is you're gonna take your GPA, your standardized test scores, your ACT, your SAT, your TOEFL, your language scores, and your class rank. You're gonna make sure you have all that information. And then you're gonna kind of start looking through schools of interest. So let's say you have your GPA, you have your standardized test score, and you have your class rank. So then we're gonna kind of compare with the academic credentials of incoming freshmen at that college. Okay, so this is literally what I would do. So I would go to Google, I would type in NYU, NYU academic requirements. I would type that in, and this is the Google search you're gonna do. And you're gonna kind of start to see typical high school grades. So it'll show you a lot of things. So GPA, what percent have that, competitiveness, that kind of thing. So this is the process that we go through. And see if my GPA is in the range. So if 44% of freshmen have this GPA and I have that GPA, that's a good sign. It's probably a target school for me at that moment. You want to identify schools with your credentials. You identify, anywhere from 3 to 8, target schools. And then after you identify your target schools, that's when you kind of start identifying your reach or dream schools and your safe schools. So once you identify your target schools that are kind of, harder to get into become your dream schools. So basically, so schools that are going to be harder to get into become your dream school, and schools are going to be easier to get into where you're above average in your academic credentials, would then become your safety schools. So we're gonna do a case study right now. So here's an example. So Claudia has a 3.92 GPA on she took the SAT. So she got a 610 on the reading and writing, and she got a 690 on the math portion. and she wants to apply to the University of San Diego. So kind of here's like an analysis, a way you can kind of think through it. So she has a 3.92 GPA, and the average GPA at University of San Diego is 3.9. So she's above average GPA wise. Her SAT score is also higher. So average math score at University of San Diego is 640, and she got a 690. So that's really good. But however, her reading score is 610. Average reading score at University of San Diego is 635. So that piece, she's a little bit below average, which isn't a problem. She's very little, like slightly below average, a couple of points. And the acceptance rate at the University of San Diego is 53%. So that's a pretty high acceptance rate. That means for every student that gets in, one student doesn't get in. So it's every one out of every two basically. Just based on the fact that she's relatively in line with these statistics, or even slightly above average, she definitely has a chance of getting into this school. So she's definitely a competitive applicant. The one thing to be cautious of here is that 53%, although it's high, it's not low either. So there's still a chance she doesn't get in. 53% doesn't mean they accept everyone. So this would not be a safety school because of the acceptance rate. So the acceptance rate is still in the range of 30% to 80%. So I wouldn't call this a safety school. This would definitely be a target school. Before I move on, I just want to kind of focus on this piece. I think sometimes students kind of forget the fact that acceptance rate still is incredibly important. So even if you're above average in GPA and in test scores, if the acceptance rate is low, you have to be cautious. So then kind of creating your list. I applied to 10 colleges. I was pretty focused on what schools I wanted to get into. And so I didn't apply to too many colleges. So applying to college takes a while. I mean, you write essays and send test scores. It can get quite expensive, applying to every single college. So you want to make a really, really, really refined list of colleges. So when you're making this list, step one, research colleges based on major, interest, and location. So first, create a list of colleges, not thinking about acceptance rate or selectivity or anything like that. First, you want to focus on what colleges you'd want to go to first. So identify anywhere from 8 to 15 colleges to put in your list. And from there, we'll start actually refining your list. So like I said, you're gonna search on Google academic requirements, start to see which ones of these become target schools for you, reach schools, safety schools, dream schools, that kind of thing. So you're gonna look at your list of schools, identify which are target schools. Some really good tools that I personally used when I was doing my college search was US News, World Rankings, Prep Scholar, and like I showed you, just Google. Just typing in Google, just Stanford academic requirements, that kind of piece. But Prep Scholar, also very helpful website. They have a database of college requirements. They also have a admissions calculator. So you put in your GPA, they put in your test scores, and they kind of show you if it's a target school, if it's a reach school, if it's a safety school. You want at least 3 to 4 target schools. You want schools that you're confident that you're going to get into. You also definitely want to push yourself. There's some schools that you are reaching towards, and you also want safety schools. So let's say it's a worst case scenario. You don't get into your target schools or your reach schools. You definitely want to make sure that you get into some kind of school that you would be happy going to. And it's very easy to think that'll never happen. But one of my closest friends in Colorado, she's incredibly smart girl. She had it was kind of a crazy situation, but she didn't get into any of her target or reach schools. And but fortunately, she still had a safety school, and she was able to get in. But she only had one safety school, so she still had a college to go to. But there is the situation if you don't have any safety schools where you don't get into any school. So definitely make sure, be cautious, be smart about the process, and have a couple safety schools, a couple target, and a couple reach. I'm looking at the questions. So is there a possibility to get rejected from safety school? You can't guarantee 100% admittance to any school, but I would say that if the school has an acceptance rate of higher than 70% and your grades are average or above average, you have an incredibly high chance of getting in. incredibly high chance of getting in. So here, this case study is going to be helpful right now for that. Okay, so Matt has a 3.5 weighted GPA. He got a 23 on the ACT. What do you guys think the University of Oregon would be for Matt? So just to go through it, so Oregon has an average GPA of 3.59, an average ACT score of 25. So Matt's GPA is less than the average, and his test score is less than the average. So at first you start thinking that since he's below average for both test scores and GPA, maybe this is actually for Matt a reach school. But then we look at the acceptance rate. So the acceptance rate at the University of Oregon is 83%. That means they accept the vast majority of students, regardless of kind of like including credentials. So that's below average, above average, and kind of in the range. So this for Matt would still be a target school, not a safety school, a target school, because even though his credentials are slightly below average, the acceptance rate is very high at this university, and there's a large chance that he's also going to get accepted, just statistically. So for this would be a target school, and it would not be a reach school. Okay, so step 3 when you're looking at dream, reach, and target schools is kind of when you're looking at your school, you want to make sure you have a good proportion. So you want 1/3 of your schools to be safety, 1/3 to be target, and 1/3 to be reach schools. So if you're talking about 9 schools, that means three for each. One thing that is very, I think, important to think about, however, is the fact that many of you will be applying to international universities as international students. So oftentimes, acceptance rates at universities for international students is less than the acceptance rate for domestic students. So oftentimes they focus on filling, domestic spots and then filling up international spots, especially at public universities in United States. So University of California, Berkeley, it's a public institution. They are legally by law required to take a certain number of domestic students, and then they'll focus in on international students. So acceptance rate for international students becomes a little bit of a difficulty in the sense that even target schools can become reach schools. So if you feel as if you're a great fit for a certain school, let's say Purdue University is your goal, and you have average GPA, you have average ACT score, so it's definitely a target school for you. But you have to take into account that as an international student, there might be a slightly lower acceptance rate for international students. So do research on that piece and make sure you're still a target. It's still a target school for you, even after kind of taking into account some potential difficulties as being an international student. In general, the acceptance rate for international students in American colleges is 44 acceptance. That's just average, averaging out all schools across the United States. 44% is selective on its own. So just 44% on its own is starting to get near the selective range. So that means most schools for international students will be target or reach schools. And then, like as I mentioned before, any school with less than 30% acceptance rate is a reach. So just for example, you could have a perfect score on the ACT, but there's a big chance you won't get into Stanford still because their acceptance rate is so little. It's 4% or 5%. So regardless of if your perfect scores, if you're above average, any school with less than 30% acceptance rate, you should treat it as a reach school.